Madhava Kunja Vihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharidhari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharidhari
Yashodanandana Rajanjanandana
Yashodanandana Brajojana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Rajanjanandana
Yashodanandana Brajojana Ranjana
Yamunatira Vanachari
Yamunatira Vanachari
Yamunatira Vanachari
Yamunatira Vanachari
Jai Om Viṣṇu Paramahamsa Bhagavata Takacharya Shat Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. All glory to simple devotees. All glory to simple devotees. All glory to simple devotees. All glory to Shri Guru. All glory to Shri Gauranga. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Om Viṣṇu Padaya Krishna Vishaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami Chamani. Actually, I'll do it. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from, I'll pull it up on my phone, I'll give it to you because I'm going to use my phone for the class. Okay. This is, here you go. Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3, we are on chapter 14. Titled Pregnancy of Diti in the Evening. We are in text number 6. Okay. So we'll go for the word. Yayā
Yayā
uttānapadaḥ
Uttānapadaḥ
putraḥ
Putraḥ
muninā
Muninā
gītayā
gītayā
arbhakaḥ
arbhakaḥ
mṛtyoḥ
mṛtyoḥ
kṛtvā
kṛtvā
eva mūrdhni
mūrdhni
aṅghrim
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 āruroha
hareḥ
hareḥ
padam
padam
yayottānapadaḥ putro
yayottānapadaḥ putro
muninā gītayārbhakaḥ mṛtyoḥ kṛtvaiva mūrdhny
mṛtyoḥ kṛtvaiva mūrdhny
āruroha hareḥ padam
āruroha hareḥ padam
yayottānapadaḥ putro muninā gītayārbhakaḥ mṛtyoḥ kṛtvaiva mūrdhny āruroha hareḥ padam yayottānapadaḥ putro muninā gītayārbhakaḥ mṛtyoḥ kṛtvaiva mūrdhny āruroha hareḥ padam. Please repeat.
yayottānapadaḥ putro
Yayottānapadaḥ putro
muninā
gītayārbhakaḥ
mṛtyoḥ kṛtvaiva mūrdhny
mṛtyoḥ kṛtvaiva mūrdhny
āruroha padam.
āruroha hareḥ padam. yayottānapadaḥ putro. muninā gītayārbhakaḥ. mṛtyoḥ kṛtvaiva aṅghrim. āruroha hareḥ padam.
Yayottānapadaḥ putro.
yayottānapadaḥ putro.
Muninā gītayārbhakaḥ. mṛtyoḥ kṛtvaiva aṅghrim. āruroha hareḥ padam.
āruroha hareḥ padam. Oh, okay. Mothers.
Yayottānapadaḥ
Putro.
muninā gītayārbhakaḥ. mṛtyoḥ kṛtvaiva aṅghrim.
āruroha hareḥ padam. yayottānapadaḥ putro. muninā gītayārbhakaḥ. mṛtyoḥ kṛtvaiva aṅghrim. āruroha hareḥ padam. Okay. So, word for word. Yayā, by which? Uttānapadaḥ,
Uttānapadaḥ
of King Uttānapāda.
of King Uttānapāda.
Putraḥ,
Putraḥ
son.
son.
Muninā,
Muninā
by the sage.
by the sage.
Gītayā,
Gītayā
being son.
being sung.
Arbhakaḥ,
Arbhakaḥ
a child.
a child.
mṛtyoḥ,
mṛtyoḥ
of death.
of death.
kṛtvā,
kṛtvā
placing.
placing.
Eva,
Eva
certainly.
certainly.
Mūrdhni,
mūrdhni
on the head.
on the head.
aṅghrim,
aṅghrim
feet.
feet.
āruroha,
āruroha
ascended.
ascended.
hareḥ,
hareḥ
of the personality of Godhead.
of the personality of Godhead.
Padam,
Padam
to the abode.
to the abode.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. By hearing these topics from the sage Nārada, the son of King Uttānapāda Dhruva was enlightened regarding the personality of Godhead, and he ascended to the abode of the Lord, placing his feet over the head of death. Purport. While quitting his body, Mahārāja Dhruva, the son of King Uttānapāda, was attended by personalities like Sunanda and others, who received him in the kingdom of God. He left this world at an early age as a young boy, although he had attained the throne of his father and had several children of his own. Because he was due to quit this world, death was waiting for him. He did not care for death, however, and even with his present body, he boarded a spiritual airplane and went directly to the planet of Viṣṇu because of his association with the great sage Nārada, who had spoken to him the narration of the pastimes of the Lord. So I'm going to read 7, 8, and 9. Okay. Attadrapitihasoyam shuto me varnita pura brahmana deva devina devanam anuprichatam. This history of the fight between the Lord as a boar and the demon Hiranyaksha was heard by me in the year long ago, as it was described by the foremost of the demigods, Brahma, when he was questioned by the other demigods. Titir dakshayani shatar maricham kashyapam patim apatyakama chakame sanjayam krikchayardita. Diti, the daughter of Daksha, being afflicted with sex desire, begged her husband Kashyapa, the son of Marichi, to have intercourse with her in the evening in order to beget a child. Text number 9. Istvagni jihvampa payasa purusham yajusham patim nimlojatyarka ashinam agni agare shamahitam. The sun was setting and the sage was sitting in trance. After offering oblations to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Viṣṇu, whose tongue is the sacrificial fire. Purport. Fire is considered to be the tongue of the Personality of Godhead, Viṣṇu, and oblations of grains and clarified butter offered to the fire are thus accepted by him. That is the principle of all sacrifices, of which Lord Viṣṇu is a master. In other words, satisfaction of Lord Viṣṇu includes the satisfaction of all the demigods and other living entities. Oh my God. Nārada Krishna padam sahagana lalita shiva shakan vidamsha Krishna karina sinudina manojaka pate gopesha gopika kanta rada kanta namosate tata kanta gaurangi rade vindamaneshwari Krishna panasute vipana mamiri vanchaka pate vachagri pasinde bhayavita patitana bhagayo vaishnavi Nama Om Viṣṇu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swamiti Namine. Nama Om Viṣṇu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deva Gaurvayam Pacharine Nirvasisa Sunivadi Pasasa Desitarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. So I request simple devotees, please bless me to say something pleasing to you. I haven't been so strong in my spiritual life lately, so please bless me to say something that's nice. So, this title is The Pregnancy of Aditi in the Evening. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is very unique because in the span of a story, it has different side points. I haven't read the Mahārāja yet, but I've heard it's described like that also, where within a story, you have a story within a story within the story. But Srimad Bhagavatam is easier to follow. So, Vidura is requesting Maitreya Muni to keep talking about the appearance of Lord Varaha. And he was curious about how this all came about. And I'm not going to spoil it for future chapters, but ultimately, Aditi gave birth to the demon sons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. So this is kind of the prelude to that story. So we've been discussing in the previous classes as far as hearing, the glories of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and how devotees are always relishing the topics and the narrations of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this verse I just spoke on, chapter 6, is talking about Dhruva Mahārāja, which his story doesn't actually come up until the 4th canto, but Maitreya Muni thought it wise to mention him as somebody who could not get enough of the narration of the Supreme Lord, and as it says in this translation, was enlightened regarding the Personality of Godhead, and he ascended to the abode of the Lord. So these next verses in this series of verses that I'm supposed to speak on is some I can speak on as far as the history of the fight between Lord Bor and Hiranyaksha. We spoke about that previously, though, and then this talks about Diti and being afflicted by sex desire. That's kind of coming up in the next verses, in the next verse. So I don't want to speak too much on that. And the sun setting and talks about sacrificial fire. I've spoken on that extensively as far as sacrifice, the importance of sacrifice. So I'm mainly going to actually focus on this verse as far as how Nārada Muni instructed Dhruva Mahārāja to attain perfection. So most of us know the story of Dhruva Mahārāja. I'm not going to go over it in detail, but most of us are aware that he was a young boy around the age of 5, I believe. He's a Satriya, and he wanted to sit on his father's lap, Uttānapāda. But his mother's was Suniti, and his stepmother Suruchi. Yeah, I think that's her name, Suruchi. So the king favored Suruchi more than Dhruva Mahārāja's mother. So when Dhruva Mahārāja was sitting on the lap of his father, Suruchi took him off and said, "You are not worthy to sit on his lap because you did not come from my womb." This greatly enraged Dhruva Mahārāja because of his Sattva spirit, and then he went to the forest, where he meditated on Viṣṇu and eventually got to get darshan of Viṣṇu. So this is very interesting, because if you look, okay, what is this? So this verse talks about Dhruva Mahārāja, right? He got darshan of Viṣṇu, and this verse talks about Daksha. So I was thinking about both of those, how Dhruva Mahārāja and Daksha both actually got darshan of Krishna, right? So Dhruva Mahārāja got darshan of Krishna, and he became a pure devotee. Daksha got darshan of Viṣṇu, and he remained a materialist. So this is very interesting, how two personalities can perform extensive austerities, both get darshan of Viṣṇu, but have a different result. And this is kind of fascinating to me, especially after you go through Srimad Bhagavatam, you compare different personalities. You see more or less when devotees get perfection, they have these similar symptoms of ecstasy. You know, hairs standing on end, perspiration, tears flowing from the eyes. So when Daksha was performing his austerities, he ultimately performed these austerities because he's a Prajapati, and he wanted the potency to create progeny, right? That was his duty. And he was feeling weak, so he performed that austerity. And it's described that when Viṣṇu came to him, he had these ecstatic symptoms. He was displaying these ecstatic symptoms. So similarly, Dhruva Mahārāja was also displayed these ecstatic symptoms, right? They both had material desires. Dhruva Mahārāja had the material desire. He wanted a kingdom greater than Lord Brahma. Prabhupada said this is the greatest material desire. Lord Brahma is the greatest personality in this universe. You know, who can exceed Lord Brahma? But Dhruva Mahārāja had a material desire to be even greater than, I think that was his grandfather or great-grandfather, I forget. Anyways, he's in this family lineage. So Dhruva Mahārāja had a great material desire, and Daksha had a great material desire. Only difference was when Dhruva Mahārāja actually got darshan of Viṣṇu, he relinquished his material desire. He said, my desire was like broken glass. Now that I see you, I have a gem, I have a valuable diamond. While Daksha, after getting darshan of Viṣṇu, he continued into materialist activities. Well, no, we're not to fault Daksha, because ultimately Viṣṇu so the devatas are put in that position because they have material desires, and because they're pious enough, Krishna will empower them to act, right? So Daksha, in one light, you can say he's not at fault for continuing his duties to create a population. That was his duty. The problem with Daksha, though, is while performing his duty, he became bewildered, and you see he became offensive. And even in the 4th canto, previously the Dhruva Mahārāja pastime is the Lord Shiva pastime. When Daksha became puffed up, he had no respect for Lord Shiva. So Daksha is a very interesting personality because after getting his head cut off and getting a goat on his head, in another body, he performed the austerities when he got the darshan of Viṣṇu. So in some way, he realized he shouldn't be offensive. But then after getting darshan of Viṣṇu, when Nārada Muni came, he was offensive again to Nārada Muni after getting darshan of Krishna. So this is very interesting how even the Bhagavad Gita says that out of 4 types of people, one type of person that comes to Krishna is one who has material desires. But Prabhupada writes in that purport that usually when people come to Krishna through material desires, when they get a little materially well off, they eventually just go away. Prabhupada writes like that, but that wasn't the case for Dhruva Mahārāja. By some way or other, Dhruva Mahārāja was fortunate to become a pure devotee. I'm curious what you guys think. I've kind of looked into is why is it that Dhruva Mahārāja was able to get darshan of Krishna. He came to Krishna with material desires, but he became a pure devotee. And he got darshan of Krishna. He was able to relinquish his material desires, while Daksha also had material desire, but he didn't become a pure devotee. I'm curious why. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, pure devotee. Yeah, exactly. So the difference between Nārada, the difference between Dhruva Mahārāja and Daksha is that exactly. Dhruva Mahārāja, what is going on? No. I'm sorry, technology is just like sometimes making things worse. Oh my God, man, what's going on? Okay, so yes, by the blessings of Nārada Muni, Dhruva Mahārāja was able to attain perfection. He was able to relinquish his material desires, right? So it's interesting that when you get the benediction of a pure devotee, even if you come to Krishna with your material desires, by the benedictions and the blessings of the pure devotee, you can relinquish them. But when you try to go to Krishna directly, you might get darshan of Krishna. In fact, most people who come to a temple gain darshan of Krishna by his deity form. And it's interesting, when I first was in DC, there was a devotee there, and I was going to the temple every day practically, and I was just so fascinated by going to Thai and DC, because I was like, wow, these deities are so beautiful. And the devotee came up to me and he said, "You don't realize how fortunate you are." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Most people, they can't see the beauty of these deities. They just think it's just some wood or some stone or some brass, but like you're actually captivated by this." And I kind of brushed it off, like, "Hey, I guess whatever." But if you think about it, it really is the mercy of a devotee and the devotees that you can get darshan of Krishna and actually appreciate his beauty. So many people are getting darshan of Krishna. So many people come to the temple, they just see some wood. But for devotees who have some blessing by other devotees, they are able to receive that. So you receive the blessings of Krishna, not directly from Krishna, but through the Guru Parampara. Through the Guru Parampara, you are able to fully relish the position of being a servant of Krishna. Daksha wasn't able to relish that position of being a servant of Krishna. Although he performed his austerities for the sake of his duty, right? Nonetheless, he did not adhere to the instructions. He did not adhere to instructions of a superior authority. So, for example, Manu, he also was in a position where he had to, we just read that, he was in a position where he had to be engaged in the universal affairs, but he was acting under the direction of Lord Brahma. So he wasn't bewildered in performing his duties. In fact, Manu he is a Mahajan. Well, yeah, Manu is a Mahajan. So you see that when you go through the Guru Parampara, you can actually relish the position of Krishna, and you can fully appreciate it. And it's also very interesting that when Krishna approached both Dhruva Mahārāja and Daksha, he offered them, "Now ask me whatever benediction you like," right? He asked me, whatever benediction you want, I will bestow it upon you. Dhruva Mahārāja, he was satisfied. Just the service of Krishna in itself was enough for Dhruva Mahārāja. For Daksha, he wanted the benediction to create progeny. And it's interesting, the Prashettas did the same thing. They performed years and years of austerity. And what benediction did they ask for? The association of pure devotees. The Prashettas said that any benediction you can give, there's no higher benediction than the association of your pure devotees. This is the highest benediction. And when you're blessed with the association of devotees, you become very fortunate. You become very exalted. Daksha didn't have that vision of wanting to associate with pure devotees. He only had the vision of wanting to carry out his duty independently without the association of devotees. This is very important. When you perform your duties independently without the association of devotees, you become puffed up by your own prowess. You become puffed up by your own abilities. But by the association of devotees, you can become humbled by the attributes of the devotees. Krishna actually, he manifests his qualities through the devotees. Krishna's devotees manifest his powers and his prowess. Just see, so many devotees are empowered to do so many different things, right? I don't even mean to put devotees on the spot, but Viṣṇu Prabhu, he's been empowered with some ability to manage this temple. Ali Krishna Prabhu is empowered to do some stuff with media. Mahosa Prabhu is empowered to do some stuff with book distribution. Jita Girish and Nathar Prabhu are empowered to, they're really good in kirtan. Shantanu is starting to become empowered to cook. So devotees, and you see that devotees, when they become empowered and you can recognize the attributes of the devotees, you actually can become humbled if you are simple-hearted. Some devotees, when they see that other great Vaishnavas are being exalted, they become envious. Daksha was envious of Lord Shiva. He became envious. He saw Lord Shiva. He said, who is this? He's living in the forest. He stinks. He has snakes on his neck. He doesn't take a bath. And he's exalted. Why should I stand for him? So when Lord Shiva walked in the assembly, Daksha had no respect for Lord Shiva. He was envious because he's bereft of the association of pure Vaishnavas. So because of that, he could not recognize the position of a Vaishnava. But Dhruva Maharaj could. Immediately when Dhruva Maharaj got the darshan of Nārada Muni, he understood that this was a special soul, and he heeded his instructions. Daksha couldn't understand why Nārada Muni was blessing his children to become Vaishnavas. He couldn't understand. He became envious of the principles of pure Krishna consciousness. So this is the dichotomy between Dhruva and Daksha. It's very interesting. So yes, Dhruva Maharaj accepted Nārada Muni as a guru, and because of that, he was able to really get the blessings of Krishna. And it's also interesting that it says that Dhruva Maharaj, a couple things in this purport. It's interesting, was attended by personalities like Sunanda and others. So when you're going back to Godhead, then like we saw Chardeshna, Prabhu, Prabhupada disciple, you saw that when he was on his deathbed, seemingly, he was surrounded by devotees, right? So devotees, they're surrounded, when they go back to Godhead, they're surrounded by devotees. When Prabhupada was performing the pastime leave his body, he was surrounded by devotees. It's actually, the time of death for a devotee is not, so for a materialist, the time of death is very scary, because they don't know what the next destination is. But for a devotee, it's not something that's so, causes so much misery for them, because they know that whether they're serving Krishna in this body or they're serving Krishna in the next body, ultimately they're still situated in a spiritual position because they understand they're not the body. And when you're attended by great personalities, they can help you. They will help you. They will bring you to Krishna. When great personalities, they will recommend you. They will recommend you to Krishna. Our Guru Maharaj is recommending us to Krishna. And the Radharani, our Guru is the representation of Radharani. And ultimately, we can only get the favor of Krishna through recommendation. When I had to go to law school, I had to get a letter of recommendation to get into law school. Right? I had to get 2 letter recommendations. Right? So even the material platform, you need a recommendation to do something in some professional field. You need to recommend, somebody has to recommend you for that. So if we want to attain the mercy of Krishna, we have to get recommendation by the devotees. So if we're offensive to the devotees, how can we expect to get the mercy of Krishna? Why would they recommend you? So, yes, so like I said, the point, they recommended Sunanda and others, they came and they got Dhruva Maharaj. What else? At an early age, as a young boy, you can say that this is child cruelty. How can you tell a child to go in the forest? His mother told him to go to the forest, perform austerities. What he was like, for 1 month, he was, only living off like the leaves of the tree. And then another month, he was only drinking water. And by the last month, he was only living off air, right? And nowadays, this would be like, oh, this is cruelty. How can you let your child do this? Like, how can your mother tell your child to do this, right? But you see, even as a young child, as a young boy, he was able to attain perfection. Similarly, like Prahlad Maharaj, as a young boy, he was able to attain perfection. Prahlad Maharaj says that, from an early age, we should strive. We shouldn't waste our time. And I remember going through that passage on Prahlad Maharaj, and he breaks down the years. Say you have 100 years. At best, we don't have 100 years. Realistically speaking, in Kali Yuga, very few people actually live for 100 years. But if you actually do, he breaks it down. Like he says, for the first 25 years, you're pretty much just wasting your life. I think the first 1 through 10, you're just a child. You don't know what you're doing. And then from 10 to I'm really messing this up, but just bear with me. You spend the first 25, half of it you spend playing, the other half you spend like trying to learn some education, right? And then from 25 to 50, you pretty much waste your time in family life, right? And then from 50 to 75, you pretty much waste your time afflicted with diseases and old age and stuff. And by 75, you pretty much are wasting, your life is almost over with. And in the midst of that, you're also wasting your time by sleeping. He breaks it down like, if there's 24 hours a day, if you sleep 12 hours, right, then pretty much 50 years of your life is wasted by sleeping, if you have 100 years, right? And so many people, I know people in my family were sleeping like 10, 12 hours a day. So if you live for 100, you practically are literally wasting half your life sleeping. So from a very early age, we should take up to the practice of Krishna consciousness, because life isn't so long, actually. It's very short. I think about this all the time, like, wow, I'm really like about to die. And it sounds very like cynical, like, oh my God, like, why? And then people ask this devotees, like, why are you so cynical? Why are you always talking about death? Well, it's because it's a reality that is not talked about. Schools are not mentioning that we have to die. Our parents aren't telling us this. Nobody's telling us and reminding us that ultimately we have to die. So if you come to understand that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to die, everything I'm doing in this life is practically a waste of time. If it's not for the satisfaction of Krishna, then you're going to want to take your human life seriously. So that's why we do remind people: birth, death, old age, and disease, birth, death, old age, and disease, birth, death, old age, and disease. Because these are the miseries that we have to go through. These are the difficulties and tribulations we go through if we're not Krishna conscious. For those who are Krishna conscious, yes, so we go through it, but you see like great exalted devotees like Kamalini, Mataji and Prabhu, they go into so much difficulties, but when you see them, they're in so much bliss. They give so much inspiration, actually, that even in old age, that you're not really affected. So people think, okay, I've attained spiritual perfection, nothing can affect me anymore, I'm not mad, I'm not sad. It's not like that. So the thing is, Guru Maharaj gives us this example that to the degree you identify with your body, to the degree you will suffer. So if you're going through some like stomach pain, for example, right? To the degree you're identifying with your body, to that degree you're going to suffer from that stomach pain. But the stomach pain might be there, but as long as you don't identify with the body, it's like, oh, it's there, but you know, I'm a spirit soul. And I've actually had practical realization of this when I'm going through some difficulties, like physically, mentally, whatever. I'm just like, okay, I'm not the body. And you see like, wow, like this pain isn't as affecting me. It's still there, but it doesn't affect you as much. Anyways, I'm saying all this to say that from an early age, we should take up to the process of Krishna consciousness, because this is a jewel, as Dhruva Maharaj is saying. This is a great gem. What else is in this? This is very interesting that he boarded with his present body in the spiritual airplane. So typically, you know, you leave this body, you attain a spiritual body. But Dhruva Maharaj, in his self-same body, he went back to Godhead. In the past, it's described that when the celestial airplane came, well, I guess you can say that. When he came from the spiritual world, he circumambulated the airplane, and then he became the same quality, spiritual quality, as the airplane, and he boarded it. So it's very interesting how even in this body, if Krishna wants, he can send you back to Godhead in this body. Christians have this idea that, you know, when you go back to heaven, you're in your body, but they have no understanding. But if Krishna wants, he can send you back in your self-same body if he wants to, right? Like he did in Dhruva Maharaj. Anything can happen with Krishna. I want to speak about that a little bit more in the class, about miracles, how Krishna can perform miracles. But I'm going to talk about that right now. That Krishna can perform miracles. And there's actually, in Mūrdhny mission of Srila Prabhupada, I was just going through this. It's a chapter called Miracles and Mysticism, right? Because people think when you come to spiritual life, I want to see a miracle. I want to see a light coming from the sky. I want to see ashes coming from your hand, and you manufacture gold. And that's why people were attracted to these bogus gurus, because they can manifest some cheap miracles. But Prabhupada wasn't interested in cheap miracles, right? And the Mūrdhny mission is a very, very interesting point of what is a real miracle, actually. His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Swami writes, Srila Prabhupada's worldwide spreading of Krishna consciousness was the greatest miracle, far surpassing any petty magic tricks. and this is Srila Prabhupada speaking, 10 years before in the whole world among foreigners, there was not a single Krishna devotee. Now you'll find thousands. Why? I have not manufactured gold. I have given them Krishna. And this is His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Swami speaking again. In contrast to the cheating of miracle men, Srila Prabhupada's intention was to enlighten and uplift people by presenting the all-beneficial message of Gita and Bhagavatam. Insisting that he was not an ordinary cheap magician, Srila Prabhupada said, we present the Bhagavad Gita as it is. That is our miracle. His magic was his resolve not to bluff. And then he says also, Guru says, that his magic was his enthusiasm. Right? So people think some magic by manifesting some trickery or whatever, but real magic, a real miracle is spreading of the Christian conscious movement. As his real magic was his enthusiasm to preach despite all difficulties. That is a miracle. I remember reading, where did I put this? Yes, I remember reading, I think this is Lila Amrita. Srila Prabhupada says that when he finally came to the West, there's a conversation. He says, yes, I am not happy here. Prabhupada was not, this is when, I think this was in New York, and he was giving a lecture in the assembly hall. And Prabhupada straight up says, I'm not happy here. And there's a woman says, yes, I know. Prabhupada says, I shall be very happy to return to my Vrindavan, that sacred place. But then, why are you here? Now, because it is my duty. I have brought some message for you. Because I have been ordered by my spiritual master, whatever you have learned, you should go to Western countries, and you must distribute this knowledge. So despite all of my difficulties, all my inconveniences, I am here. Because I am obligated by duty. If I go and sit down in Vrindavan, that will be good for my personal conveniences. I shall be very comfortable there, and I will have no anxiety, nothing of that sort. But I have taken all the risks in this old age because I am duty bound. I am duty bound, so I have to execute my duty despite all my inconveniences. Prabhupada's enthusiasm is his miracle. He was not happy. Nonetheless, he persisted, and he trekked on the path of loneliness. There's a chapter in the Lilamrita, struggling alone. Prabhupada was alone for so many years. Nonetheless, his enthusiasm was his magic, and by his simple enthusiasm alone, he was able to spread the Christian conscious movement all over the world. So this is a real miracle, actually, and this is also mentioned, and I was just reading this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. As far as so I'll just go to the pastime before I bring it up. That the pastime of the Kumar Brahmana, and then after Lord Chaitanya instructs the Kumar Brahmana to preach, he comes across the Vasudev a leper. So there was a devotee, there's a Brahmana, he had leprosy, right? Lord Chaitanya, he comes across this Brahmana with leprosy. And this Brahmana was suffering. He was suffering like anything, but this Brahmana was so meek and humble that I never actually seen leprosy. I don't really know what it is, but it's described that your hands and eyelids, it's like floating, like disappearing in thin air, basically. Yeah, but it's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita that there were some worms coming out of the patches in his skin. The Brahmana was so humble, meek, that when a worm came out of one of his patches of leprosy in his skin, he picked the worm up and put it back in there. Yeah, it's like, I guess because he knew, you can't really understand the activities of the Vaishnavas. But anyways, Lord Chaitanya comes across this Brahmana, and he sees that he's suffering. So Lord Chaitanya touches this Brahmana, and immediately all his leprosy goes away. I'm also praying that my eczema can go away. Lord Chaitanya can touch me. I'm just joking. But so the point is that Prabhupada in this pastime, he makes a very nice point that only Srila Prabhupada has a transcendental vision to see how he can relate this to the spreading of Krishna consciousness all over the world. This is the Madhya Lila. This is chapter 7, text 148. Right. Okay, so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised Vasudeva to preach about Krishna and thus liberate all living entities. As a result, Krishna would very soon accept him as a devotee. As a side point before I read the purport. So how Lord Chaitanya would preach is he would infuse he would chant the holy name of the Lord as this is the chapter Lord Chaitanya travels South India. So what he would do is how he's able to spread Christian consciousness all over the world. I'm sorry. How he was able to spread Christian consciousness all over South India. He would meet somebody. He would tell them to chant Hari Hari. And then that person would become infused with spiritual ecstasy. And then that person would go to his village and he would tell other people to chant Hari Hari. And it's mentioned that through the Haladini Shakti and the Shanvit Shakti, people were able to see the qualities of or attain a spiritual potency to preach. So you can't actually get spiritual potency to preach without being covered by the spiritual energy. And spiritual energy consists of this Haladini Shakti and the Samvit Shakti, knowledge and the bliss giving Shakti. So when people would see, after Lord Chaitanya would infuse this Shakti into one living entity, that living entity would go to his village and he would spread it to everybody else in the village, right? And so this is what he did to Vasudeva. After he cured him of his leprosy, he told him to preach about Krishna all over the world. All over at least his village, right? And Prabhupada makes a very interesting point in this purport. Although Vasudeva Vipra was a leper and had suffered greatly, still, after Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cured him, he instructed him to preach Krishna consciousness. This is a very important point. Indeed, the only return the Lord wanted was that Vasudeva preach the instructions of Krishna and liberate all human beings. All right, that is the process of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Each and every member of this society was rescued from a very abominable condition, but now they are engaged in preaching the code of Krishna consciousness. They are not only cured of the disease called materialism, but are also living a very happy life. Everyone accepts them as great devotees of Krishna, and their qualities are manifest in their faces. If one wants to be recognized as a devotee by Krishna, he should take to the preaching work following the advice of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then one will undoubtedly attain the lotus feet of Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Lord Krishna himself, without delay. So this point, as far as each and every member of this society was rescued from a very abominable condition. Srila Prabhupada came and he rescued us from such a low, disgusting position, and he cured us. He cured us of our disease called materialism, as Prabhupada is saying. The disease called materialism. It's very interesting how Prabhupada is able to make these analogies. He sees his Vasudeva leper, and he compared his disease, right, to the disease of materialism, right? And how he cured him, after Srila Prabhupada curing our disease, only thing we have to do repay him is to just spread the mood of Srila Prabhupada. Only thing we have to do is spread the mission of Lord Chaitanya, right? Just think about our lowly position, how low we were before we came to the Society of Krishna Consciousness. And we were saved. And as Lord Chaitanya is preaching to the Brahmana Vasudeva, now I cured you, now go preach. Same thing. Prabhupada cured us, now it's our duty to repay him by that. So that is a real miracle. The real miracle is how Prabhupada was able to transform malechas and yavanas into devotees of Krishna. And I've always wanted to speak on this. The offering's not up, so I don't want to go too far over. But Srila Prabhupada is the manifestation of all of the 12 Mahajans. So Srila Prabhupada is very unique. And you can actually, if you look at his qualities and attributes, you can attribute it to the 12 Mahajans. I wanted to go through those 12 Mahajans and compare their qualities to Srila Prabhupada. I've always wanted to do this, so I might as well do it now. So Lord Brahma. Okay, Lord Brahma is the creator of this material world, right? Whether you say the sub-creator. And by the order of Krishna, he was able to get inspiration to manifest this material world. Srila Prabhupada, he is the creator of ISKCON. He's the creator of they say that the temples are the abode of the spiritual world. So he's the creator of that, of these temples and centers for people to escape this rampant materialism. So Prabhupada was the creator of that. It's like Lord Brahma. And the purpose of this creation for Lord Brahma was to facilitate the gross material desires of the living entity. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada fulfilled the desires of the previous acharyas. He fulfilled the desires of the previous acharyas by establishing an international movement for everybody to come together and preach. So Nārada Muni's Parivrajaka. He travels all around the worlds, 3 worlds, seeing the glories of Krishna. Same thing with Srila Prabhupada. It was ever a moment he wasn't traveling. I was just reading in the Translated Diary. Prabhupada is super sick right now. This is 1976. He's in London, and the devotees are begging him. He's in the Bhaktivedanta Mandir, they're begging him, Srila Prabhupada, just stay. Prabhupada was coughing out mucus. He was super sick. He couldn't even. He was when they picked him up from the airport, he was throwing up. He couldn't even digest. I think he had watermelon juice, and it messed up his stomach. So he was super sick. The devotees are urging Prabhupada, just stay put. Prabhupada said, no, it's my duty to travel, it's my duty to preach, right? Despite all difficulties and inconveniences, Prabhupada, he went all around the world to spread the mission of Krishna consciousness, similarly like Nārada Muni. Lord Shiva is very renounced, but he's simultaneously very wealthy, right? Lord Shiva, you see he lives in the forest. Nonetheless, his wife is Durga Devi, right? So he's Lord Shiva, and he's known to give all these material benedictions to his devotees. So Lord Shiva is very renounced, very wealthy. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada, he's super renounced. Srila Prabhupada, he could live in an apartment in Bombay, a highly opulent apartment in Bombay, and he also lived in the mud in Bhuvaneshwar. So Prabhupada is super renounced, but he's super wealthy simultaneously. Now this is also seen in Lord Shiva. The 4 Kumaras. The 4 Kumaras are very youthful, right? And they're misunderstood. When the 4 Kumaras went to the spiritual world, they were blocked. They were blocked. Like, who are these young boys? What are you doing? You can't come in the spiritual world. They're misunderstood by Jai and Vijay. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada, he was very youthful. Srila Prabhupada was very youthful. His disciples I remember there was one anecdote, they would read Krishna book to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was looking like a young boy, just relishing Krishna book. So Prabhupada was very youthful, he was very innocent, and he's also misunderstood. People think Prabhupada was a misogynist, or he was racist, or this ism or that ism. He's misunderstood. You have to understand, Prabhupada is coming from the spiritual world. He's seeing all this nonsense in Kali Yuga. Like imagine coming from such a pure place and coming down to, the Bowery, and Lower East Side of New York. It's like, whew, oh my Krishna. So Prabhupada is misunderstood because he has a vision of the spiritual intelligence. He has spiritual vision. So what he sees is not what we see. We don't have the same vision as Srila Prabhupada. So because we don't have the same vision as him, it's easy to misunderstand him. So like I said, the 4 Kumars are misunderstood. Srila Prabhupada is also misunderstood. Lord Kapila Dev propounded the philosophy of Sankhya Yoga. You're not the body. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada, that was his most famous quote, you are not the body. Prabhupada, I think His Holiness Bhakti Swami Maharaj mentions that Prabhupada, whenever he encountered a new audience, that was his first thing he would tell them, you are not the body. Because without understanding you're not the body, you cannot make any advancement in spiritual life. That is the first step. So Lord Kapila Dev was empowered to propound the Sankhya philosophy. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada propounded the philosophy that you are not the body. Manu. So Manu, he gave the law books to humankind in the Manu Samhita. Srila Prabhupada gave us these books. These are law books for the next 10,000 years. These are law books. By studying these books, we don't need to go to school necessarily. We don't need to go to these universities. Just by studying Srila Prabhupada's books, everything is there. About politics, sociology, even medicine. Everything's in Srila Prabhupada. I remember reading Chaitanya Charitamrita about different medicines that can cure different diseases. Like, everything is in Srila Prabhupada's books. It's all comprehensive. Is all comprehensive. There's nothing that's in Srila Prabhupada's books that is outside the scope of knowledge. Real knowledge, understanding matter, spirit, and the controller of both. Srila Prabhupada fully, with his books, encompasses what real knowledge is. These are his law books. And Manu, just like Manu, he gave us these books. Prahlad Maharaj. So Srila Prabhupada and Prahlad Maharaj are very, very, very similar. So Prahlad Maharaj, he remembered Krishna. He is the, so it talks about the 9 angas of bhakti, Shravanam Kirtan, right? I'm spaced now. It's 9, right? I thought so. I'm like, oh God. So yeah, the 9 angas, and Prahlad Maharaj is the manifestation, or he represents remembering, smaranam, right? So Srila Prabhupada also, amongst all difficulties, Srila Prabhupada always remembered Krishna. I just read the past time of Srila Prabhupada when he was in New York, And he remembered, although he did not want to be there, he said, I do not want to be here. But he remembered the instructions of his Guru Maharaj. He remembered that I am duty bound to be here. I am duty bound to preach. So amongst all difficulties, Prahlad Maharaj remembered Krishna. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada, amongst all difficulties, remembered Krishna. Not only that, Prahlad Maharaj was very unconcerned about speaking strongly. In the presence of his father, my dear my dear son, what did you learn in school today? That we should not live like hogs, dogs. This going in his father. You're not the body. You shouldn't live like an ass. And then this is a great demon. Prahlad Maharaj was speaking strongly in front of his father, right? Similarly, Srila Prabhupada amongst whatever crowd, Prabhupada was bold. He did not care who was the audience. He did not compromise. Prabhupada made no compromise. He was fearless in preaching strongly, right? Very, very. So, I mean, the offer's still not up, so I'm just going to finish this. Janak Maharaj, he is the embodiment of yayā. That comes in a series of verses that whatever a great man does, come and follow. They're speaking of Janak Maharaj, how he was working in the world. He was a great king, but nonetheless, he wasn't attached to his opulences. So he showed the example of working in the world but not being attached. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada, when he performed the pastime of being a grihasta, he wasn't attached. Prabhupada showed the example that even though he was in this ashram, he was not attached to whatever facilities he's had. Actually, you see that when his wife, he told his wife, okay, either tea biscuits or Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm really butchering it, but she said tea. She said tea biscuits, and Prabhupada was like, oh, I'm out. He left. He was not attached to that situation. He realized that situation was not conducive to his Krishna consciousness, so he was renounced from the situation. So Prabhupada is teaching us that even when he was in grihasta life, how to be detached from your unfavorable material circumstances. Bhishma Dev fought fiercely. He was a warrior. He not only that, he was seen as, he's a grandfather to the Pandavas. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada was seen as a grandfather to his disciples. He was seen as a father. And Hareḥ Prabhu makes that point that every time he saw Srila Prabhupada, it reminds him of his father. You know, Prabhupada had that fatherly figure to a lot of his disciples. Not only that, Bhishma Dev, he died when Bhishma Dev left this world. He was in the presence of Krishna. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada, when Srila Prabhupada, he was in the presence of Krishna through the holy name. His disciples were around him chanting Hare Krishna. He died like a warrior. Srila Prabhupada died like a warrior on the battlefield. He didn't die in some hospital bed with, all these wires hooked up to him. No, he died like a warrior, just like Bhishma Dev on the battlefield, preaching the Hare Katha. Sukadeva Goswami was a great son of a Vaishnava. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada was a great spiritual son of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And Sukadeva Goswami was empowered to preach the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada was empowered to preach that message as well. Yamaraj punishes the miscreants. Srila Prabhupada punished the miscreant scientists and frog-like philosophers through the Krishna consciousness philosophy. And then Bali Maharaj. Bali Maharaj is the epitome of full surrender, Atma Nivedanam. Srila Prabhupada, amongst all difficulties, he showed Sharanam Gacha. He utterly surrendered everything to the lotus feet of Krishna. And you see that, like I said, when he was in Vrindavan, he was not happy. He was not happy when he was in New York. He wanted to go back to Vrindavan. But because of the full surrender he portrayed, mind, body, and spirit, he portrayed how, when we surrender to Krishna, we have to sometimes forsake our own desires for the pleasure of Krishna. Despite what you want, you have to put your own desires secondary to the desires of Krishna. And Prabhupada showed that. Prabhupada showed what full surrender looks like, what it means to be fully surrendered. Through mind, body, and words, fully surrendered to the lotus feet of his Guru and Krishna. So, to wrap up everything, as we said earlier, Dhruva Maharaj, in this pastime that comes up in this verse, he was enlightened regarding the personality of Godhead through Nārada Muni. Through the mercy of Nārada Muni, Dhruva Maharaj was able to get darshan of Krishna and give up material desires, while Daksha was not. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada is like our Nārada Muni. He's our Nārada Muni. He's came to save us through our material desires, right? Through whatever our material desires we've had, Srila Prabhupada encouraged us to give up our material desires, chanting Hare Krishna, as Nārada Muni instructed. Dhruva Mahārāja to chant Onamo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srila Prabhupada is teaching us to chant Hare Krishna. And by that, we can have darshan of the Lord. We can give up our material desires, and we can go back to home, back to Godhead, being attended by the pure Viṣṇus. Okay, so I'm gonna stop my class here. If anybody has anything to say, chastisements, questions, anything.
Okay, so I just wanted to, oh, wait, this is not on. Hare Krishna? Okay.
Hare Krishna.
So on this point where Prabhupada repeatedly said that I don't like this place, I don't want to be here, but it's my duty to be here. There's like this one pastime, I think some of you may have heard it before, where related by Bhavananda Prabhu. Okay, Prabhupada said, I have so many palaces all over the world that I can stay in. Practically speaking, there's no difference between the Goswamis and me in terms of our lifestyle. They stayed under a different tree every night. I stay in a different palace every night. They wrote, I write. Originally, I did not want to come here. He was not talking about coming to America, but to this world. He said, Krishna asked, I want you to write those books. Come down and write those books. Prabhupada said to Krishna, but I don't want to go to the material world. It's such a terrible place. Krishna said, don't worry, I'll take care of everything. You write the books. And Bhavananda Prabhu says that this is the first and only time that he ever heard Prabhupada or read where Prabhupada actually spoke about his time in the spiritual world.
Yeah, I really like that pastime. It just shows that Srila Prabhupada is not he's a very unique personality. And if you look at Prabhupada's activities, you have to be empowered to do what Prabhupada did. And yeah, like I said, Prabhupada, he had different temples that he could stay at. And he wasn't attached to any one or other temple. He was attached to just being with Krishna. Of course, he wanted to leave his body in the Dham, but everywhere Prabhupada went, he turned every temple into a Dham. All these centers are Dhams, you know. All these centers are places where people can come and be immersed in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. So yeah, Srila Prabhupada's position is supremely unique. It's supremely exalted, and you know, we're very fortunate to have him as our acharya. Founder acharya of the movement. Yeah.
About this?
There's one thing I heard recently, Guru Maharaj said, is that he was in some class a while ago, and one of his godbrothers said that Prabhupada is much greater than Bali Maharaj.
Yeah.
He was kind of, yeah, he didn't kind of, he kind of asked about that, and yeah, that's just something pretty mind-blowing to think about. He's
I
greater than
forget.
Bali Maharaj.
I remember listening to that. I think Guru Maharaj made the point that, I gotta go back and listen, why he said he's greater than Bali Maharaj. I don't remember exactly. I don't want to speculate. I do remember listening to the class. I think it's on the lines that Srila Prabhupada, I just can't remember. I gotta remember what exactly. I don't want to speculate up here. So.
Yeah, I don't remember either, but it's in his 2024 Vyasa Puja.
Yeah, Vyasa Puja, right. I gotta listen to it again.
Yeah, I was just reflecting on, you were reading from the Mood and Mission of Srila Prabhupada, how Srila Prabhupada's miracle, I think it was,
Yes,
is that
his miracle, right.
He didn't, like...
Yeah, what he said, Guru Maharaj says that, yes, so Srila Prabhupada said, we present the Bhagavad Gita as it is, that's our miracle. His magic was his resolve not to bluff. And then Srila Prabhupada's worldwide spreading of Krishna consciousness was the greatest miracle, far surpassing any petty magic tricks. And then he says his magic was his enthusiasm.
Yeah. I really like that point about his miracle or his magic was presenting Krishna consciousness without bluff.
Yeah.
Without wanting cheap adoration or
Right.
anything like that.
Yeah, because it's like there's so many Bhagavad Gitas that were propounded before. Well, some different people try to comment on the Bhagavad Gita, right? But they have their own speculations. But this is Bhagavad Gita as it is, right? It's not, hasn't been thwarted by somebody's mundane conception of who Krishna is. So it is a miracle that Prabhupada did not impose his own speculations on the teaching of Bhagavad Gita, but just allowed the Bhagavad Gita to be revealed how Krishna wanted it to be revealed.
Yeah, it's a symptom of a pure devotee that you look at Srila Prabhupada's position and you see how humble he still is. And that's a symptom of a pure devotee, because if a conditioned soul gets that type of adoration and that kind of prestige, then it totally eats him up.
Yeah.
And as our Guru Maharaj says, you can't digest that kind of pride.
Yeah, it's indigestible.
You get indigestion.
Yeah.
So it completely ruins you.
Yeah.
And you see that with many spiritual personalities within Krishna consciousness also.
Yeah.
They get this position and then pride eats them up, and then, they end up in not a good place.
That's a good point. I remember reading that Srila Prabhupada, when he's from the pastime of leaving his body, that his godbrothers, some of the same godbrothers who criticized him, came to see Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada just broke down in tears, crying, like, I've been so offensive to my godbrothers. Please forgive me. But these are the same godbrothers who were criticizing Prabhupada. But Prabhupada was feeling so humble, he felt that he offended them. So, you see that people have so much pride against people who, slight them in their life. They will carry it to the time of death. At the time of death, they will hold on to whatever discrepancy or whatever slight offense somebody made to them. At the time of death, they will still hold on to that. But you see Srila Prabhupada, even though he was the acharya of the whole world, but he's still crying, saying, I offended my godbrothers, the same godbrothers who criticized him. So yes, as your point you're making, that Prabhupada's humility is just unmatched. Despite all the opulences he had, he still felt himself as a humble servant of Krishna and never held any animosity towards anybody who slighted him. And that's hard for me to do. Somebody says one thing to me, I'm thinking about it for a month. I can't believe they said I look like Bhakti Tirtha Swami. Thought about that one for 2 years. Took me years to get off of that one. So, yeah. But yeah, the humility of a great devotee. Yeah.
I found this transcript of this. So we were in the 8th canto of Vamana Lila, and in response to a question of mine, Yashomanti Nandan Prabhu said, Srila Prabhupada is much more than Bali Maharaj, as if it were obvious, and I should have known. This confounded me, and I went through some mental somersaults before registering that Yashomanti Nandan Prabhu was, of course, correct. Srila Prabhupada, you are the sum total of all the demigods, mahajans, sages, and great personalities mentioned in the Vedic literature, none of whom we would have known about had it not been for you. We offer all respects to such great personalities, yet we do not want to be exactly like them. We are most happy to have been picked up by you, and we would not leave service to your mission, even to become an exalted sage or demigod. Srila Prabhupada, you are greater than all the demigods, mahajans, and sages combined. The demigods live for many thousands of years in their celestial abodes and offer boons to people on earth, but you, Srila Prabhupada, coming to earth for just a few short years, bestowed gifts that even the demigods can hardly aspire to attain. Once when asked if you go to see the demigods, you replied, sounding somewhat affronted, what is the use? They may come to see me. Oh, he is known to the emperor. I cannot go to see them. Why shall I see the demigods? We have all respect for them, but there is no need of meeting any demigod. Why should I bother my head for meeting the demigods?
You want to elaborate on that? No. No, I mean, this is interesting, like Bali Maharaj, how all the demigods come and give their obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. So yeah, he is a Mahajan. Prabhupada's definitely a Mahajan, and we really don't understand. That's why this book, Mūrdhny Srila Prabhupada, is very nectar, because we really don't know what Bible gift we have. And I also think about this also, how as ISKCON progresses, the thing is we are one, generation from Srila Prabhupada. So, most of us, our Guru Maharaj, was Prabhupada's disciple. But then you see as Kali Yuga progresses, it's going to get farther and farther away from like, that link between Srila Prabhupada. Right now it's just like one, one person between us and Srila Prabhupada. But gradually it's going to be like 5, 6, 10, 11, whatever, right? But even in the midst of that, Srila Prabhupada is still going to be like, that's why you put founder Acharya, because he founded the movement. He still wanted to establish his position that although there might be so many other gurus and acharyas after me, he's the founder Acharya. But the point I'm making is that as generations go down, people might not really appreciate Srila Prabhupada's position as much because they're so kind of like, they're so far away from him. But we have the great fortune being not so far away from him because we're only one link away. Anyways, I think about that a lot, how in ISKCON, if we don't understand Srila Prabhupada's position, that's why this book that our guru wrote is very important, actually, to carry on his legacy. It's very important so that we do not forget who, like, we do Guru Puja every day, but sometimes you just do it as a ritual, right? It's like, oh, Shri Guru, it's just like, but you don't, like, there's a reason why we're singing that. There's a reason why we're doing it to Srila Prabhupada. Anyways, we can have Prabhupada Katha all day practically. But. Okay, Mataji's.
How you were talking about how we have to receive, how it's a very exalted position of mercy to be able to even, recognize the beauty of the deities. It reminded me of the pastime, I believe Grimraj tells it, but how there was a worker who came into the manor and he needed to do some work. I forget what it was, whether it was the walls or the floors, but anyway, some work needed to be done and the darshan was open, but all the person could look at was how beautiful the temple room was. That never once did they even glance at the deities. And,
I've heard that devotees have, when they first see the deities, they didn't even recognize it. They saw, there's such a nice flower display. Like, wow, the flowers are so nice here. And they completely just like, I do that too sometimes. I'm like, oh wow, these decorations are really nice. But then you forget that, like, it's Krishna, he's making those decorations nice. Like, he beautifies everything that's around him. So yeah, it is really actually difficult to recognize the position and the beauty of Krishna actually without the mercy of somebody. Like, try and do it on your own. Obviously, people, like I said, they think we're just worshiping some stone or some wood or something. But you see our own Guru Maharaj when he's in Mangala Arti, you see like how absorbed he is and just looking at the deities. Like, he's completely absorbed, fixed on like the beauty of the deities. So he's able to recognize it. But so yeah, it takes time, obviously. It takes time to come to that position of spiritual vision. The Archa Vigraha form of Krishna is non-different from Krishna. Yeah. Anything else?
and then also, I could also be misremembering too, but I think in Jai Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj also gives a similar analysis of Srila Prabhupada, right? Where he's comparing him to the Mahārajas.
Yeah, he does. He gives analysis of like different exalted personalities and talks about the traits that those personalities have that Srila Prabhupada has. So, I mean, it is like in this class I was talking about Dhruva Maharaj and Daksha, the differences. It is sometimes nice to like compare and contrast these different personalities because you see that everybody, all these great personalities, Srimad Bhagavatam, they have different characteristics and a lot of them have different stories, how they attain perfection and stuff like that. So when you read them, you realize that our own stories are unique as well. It's not like Christian consciousness is not a one-size-fits-all, right? Everybody has their own struggle. Everybody has their own journey they have to go through. But it's chalked out by Krishna for us specifically. So Krishna specifically has a certain obstacle that he puts me through. He might not put you through or you. Right? He has a certain obstacle specifically for us to come over a certain anartha, right? So it is interesting to compare and contrast different devotees and disciples. Different devotees in the Srimad Bhagavatam, because you see that, everybody has a different story, but ultimately the underlying theme in all of it is that they attain perfection by the mercy of Krishna and his devotees. Okay, anything else?
Another thing that I really appreciated was at the end how you were emphasizing Guru Puja and the importance of it in ISKCON, because that's something Guru Maharaj also mentions a lot. Is it was completely different from our sampradaya, how Prabhupada instituted the Guru Puja program every morning. That's something you don't see anywhere else, but Prabhupada brought it because we have no understanding really of how to properly worship a Guru.
Right, and that kind of goes to Ajita Girish's point, how Srila Prabhupada, when he would go to different temples, he would literally sit on the vyasana, and then he would accept the Guru Puja. Like, I remember this. He made his own pranam mantra. He made his disciples worship him. He taught them how to worship him on his Vyasa Puja because they didn't know how to worship him. But you're seeing Prabhupada is doing it not of worship me, because he's teaching them because this is what I did to my Guru Maharaj. Because I'm doing this to my Guru Maharaj, I'm just handing it down so you, as in the disciplic succession. And it takes extreme humility to do that. Like, imagine the humility you have to order people to worship you but not be puffed up by it. Oh my God. I get puffed up when some dog comes up in the street and wants to smell my shoes or something. Like, oh wow, this dog. So anyway, it's 9 o'clock. Shrimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Vanchika upaturi bacha. Kripa sindhu bhaya bacha. Patitanam pamayo Vaishnavi namo namaha.
I can manage a garland tomorrow. It'll just be mainly red, if not only. Were you planning on going to